All right. Well, good morning, California. Good day, Bible Belt. Good evening, Tokyo. Wherever you're at, welcome to Spirecast. I am excited to be here for, I think this is season 2, episode 10. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyler McKenzie. I'm the lead pastor at Northeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky. It's my honor to host today. We all know that ministry is incredibly challenging, especially the last couple of years. And so trying to remain healthy and resilient as a church leader is it's just been a difficult task. So that's why Spirecast exists. Spire wants to provide you with the resources to equip you to lead out of a place of wholeness, and also want to give you some practical ministry tips to help you meet the challenge of this cultural moment that we're all facing. So that is why twice a month we are doing this. We're bringing you an opportunity to hear from a leading expert and giving you a chance to ask some questions. Already have had some questions texted in. You can put questions in the comments if you've got some live ones for our guest today. And allow me to introduce her without further ado. Today, we're going to be talking with Beth Leach. And we're going to be hearing from her about her book called Radiant Church. Beth is pastor at the Christ Church of Oak Brook in the western suburbs of Chicago. She also previously served as the senior pastor of First Church of the Nazarene of Pasadena, PASNAZ, as I've heard it's called. It's a nice nickname. And she's also pastored in Illinois and New York. And Radiant Church isn't her only book. She's also authored a book called Emboldened. She's written a devotional, 40 Days on Being a 6. For all of you Enneagram 6s out there, I'm a 3. Don't judge me. But I want to welcome Beth on right now. So I've been looking forward to this conversation. Hey, Tara.
Hey, Tyler. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to dig in with you.
Yes. Okay. Now, and Beth, based on my research, last introductory question here, my extensive Instagram research, your next biggest gig after Spirecast, of course, is preaching at your son's junior high camp.
That's right. It is like the greatest invitation I could ever have. And by that, I mean, like, I had to ask my son permission if he would be okay with me speaking at his junior high camp.
I was dying this morning when I looked on your Instagram. Okay, so and he gave you like a top 6 list of things you don't do at speaking at his camp.
That's correct.
And this was my favorite one.
Yes.
And I just want you to riff on this because I know you're already probably thinking about your sermon. This was rule number 6. Start sermon off with fun questions. Play a game. It has to be fun. Not all caps, not Simon Says. Maybe do a pie in the face.
Yes.
Is that where we're going?
Yes. He said halfway through the sermon, or at the beginning, just start playing a game, do a pie in the face. He was very detailed. And I think my favorite moment was when he said, well, first of all, don't do TikTok dances. Don't talk about TikTok. He said, don't get up there and say this exactly how he did it. He said, don't get up there and say, yo, 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 everyone. He said, I can't do that. And then he said, and don't talk about me. Like he said, Mom, don't get up there and give a sermon illustration about how my son hit the baseball so far. And that is how far the love of God is. He said, don't do that. So he's taken all my best sermon material away from me.
I have found that when you're talking with the youth, if you use the definite article, the TikTok, the YouTube, it lands real well. So, okay. So
I'm going to do that.
There you go. Let's talk Radiant Church. Straight off the top, great book. Everybody go buy it today. Read it. Read it with your leadership team at your church. Read it with your elder board. Read it with your top level volunteers. Starting off at the very top of the introduction, you give this quotation, and I couldn't agree with it more, but I want to hear your heart on this. So you say an emphasis on numbers as the golden metric for success can become unhealthy, especially when we pursue success at the expense of faithfulness or appearance at the expense of authentic community. That's so rich. So just tell us a little more about why numbers can be so unhealthy for a pastor's soul.
Yeah. Well, so I wrote that for myself, Tyler. When I wrote that, I was pastoring PASNAZ, a church where a lot of people left because of my gender. And I can remember on Sunday mornings before getting up to preach, doing what some of us do as pastors, we turn around to look, and we keep looking, and we see how full is a sanctuary. And, and a lot of people in the church were aware of the amount of people that had left over the gender issue. And so at the time, it was very real and it was very raw for me, because also simultaneously, we were seeing incredible fruit happen in the life of the congregation. We were seeing the fruit of faithfulness. We were seeing the fruit of service. We were seeing the fruit of those who were standing with the marginalized. We were seeing just so much beautiful goodness happen. And yet, what everybody wanted to talk about was numbers. And a lot of this is because we have been shaped by this vision of the good life within the church, where we celebrate numbers. We celebrate the pastors who grow churches quickly. And don't get me wrong, numbers are a helpful metric. I don't think we should throw it out. I look at numbers every week. I think it's helpful for us to understand. I think it's really helpful for us to have good metrics. But numbers don't tell the only story. So for example, one of the things that we are talking about at Christ Church constantly is, we just had a meeting about this yesterday. When people come, it's not just about butts in the seat, but are they growing? Are they serving? Are they engaging? And for us, growing is, are they in a group where they are serving in the community, where they're bearing witness to a triune God? And so what ends up happening is, especially coming out of COVID, numbers are volatile right now. I mean, it's up, it's down. I think so many pastors, Easter Sunday comes around and we're like, oh, they all came back at once. And then the next Sunday, it was like, we're back down to 60%.
Yep.
And I think that can be really, really crushing on the soul of the pastor. But furthermore, it only tells a piece of the story. And then what it does to us, it crushes our ecclesiology when numbers becomes the golden crown. Because what we end up doing is we end up ordering our way of doing this beautiful thing that we call church, in a way where we might forfeit faithfulness for success. And furthermore, it just, the volatility of it, I think it's just not good for the pastor's soul, and for the congregation.
I think that some of the ugly trends that have stained the church's public witness aren't necessarily only connected to the golden calf of growth, but they're directly connected to it. Like all the institutional cover-ups and moral failures that we're seeing hit the headlines, from, what's going on with the SBC to Ravi Zacharias to Jerry Falwell Jr., whatever. The culture of competition, the resistance to social justice, just one after the other. And like you said, the slow burnout of the pastor's soul. I want to hear you talk just a little more about that. You talked about how it can be soul crushing. When you were sitting there in the front row, and you turned around and you looked behind you, and there was about half as many people there as you would have liked, or that used to be there. What are some of those negative self-talk, just some of those negative messages that are going through your brain that are not of God, but are there? And how do you fight those off before you step up to preach or pastor the congregation?
Yeah, that's really good, Tyler. And I tend to be really vulnerable on this stuff, because I think it hopefully helps give other pastors permission to name what they're going through. But to be totally honest, I would turn around and think, I'm wrecking this church. I'm wrecking this church. I really carried a mantle for so long that was not mine to carry. Meaning I was so afraid, because I was the first female pastor of a mega church in my tribe. I was so afraid that I was going to screw it up for everyone else. And I carried just shame and guilt that we lost so many people because of my gender. And so my worth was so wrapped up in who was there in Sunday mornings and who wasn't, and whether or not I could work harder or work hard enough or prove myself to turn it around. And so all of that like would propel just this workaholism in me. I was constantly striving. I was working a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and forsaking my family. Was struggling with emotional presence at home because the numbers was thrusting me into this space of of overworking to try to turn it around, striving to turn it around, proving myself to turn it around. Um, and so, one of the things that was, I mean, and so you asked, like, how did I get up to preach? Well, Sunday mornings for me is, I do believe, so much in the presence and the power of the Spirit that is available in that moment.
Yeah.
And so when I preach, I so deeply believe to my bones that I am accessing a presence and a power, um, that is truly flowing. And so I would have those thoughts on a Sunday morning, but they would be fleeting. I would have moments to try to center myself beforehand. And eventually I stopped turning around, by the way.
Yeah. It's
I,
good.
I stopped
Just
turning
stop
around and
turning
looking,
around. Yeah.
stopped turning around and looking.
Mhm.
And I eventually did cut through all of that, all of those thoughts with years of therapy, spiritual direction, friends, and turning the narrative, which today I don't believe I wrecked that church. And today I don't carry the shame and guilt. Today I recognize God was doing a different work that we could have never imagined, or dreamed. And that was through a lot of support of pastors, of therapy and friends. And so, by the grace of God, I thank God for what God did do, during my time in Pasadena.
The pastoral, like the burnout attrition rate right now is very concerning.
Yeah.
It just makes me wonder what would the attrition rate be, or would it be as high right now among clergy if we measured success primarily by pastoral care, faithful preaching, just faithfulness in general rather than performance metrics. But let me
Yep.
bounce to the book here. In chapter 5 of the book, I love this. You talk about how we often try attracting our neighbors to the church through glitz and glamour in a worship service. It's that old school invest, invite sort of mindset. Like, let's get them to the service though, and let's let the pastor evangelize them, and the moving lights and the Jesus smoke and all the things, right? A lot of times we choose that, you point out, rather than the stunningness of just a transformed life. So, what practices would you encourage pastors to prioritize in both their own personal lives and in discipling their people, so we don't get distracted by the demands of ministry and we don't miss being good news ourselves to our neighbors?
Yeah. Presence and proximity is so important. Presence in our neighborhood, proximity to people. And I know so many of us pastors are talking about this all the time, so this is not new, but we busy our people with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of programs, and so with a lot of stuff. And so when the invitation then comes for them to be with people in their neighborhood, they're tapped. They're tired because they've been so busy doing the programs. And so one of the things that we have got to start doing as pastors is modeling that presence, in the neighborhoods, modeling presence with the people around us, the presence, with leadership in our communities, with coaches and schools. And so, because Christians we've got to be in close proximity, with the people in our neighborhoods, with the people in our schools, because evangelism, which I know in some work spaces has become a little bit of a dirty word, and I think maybe for good reason in some ways, because we've over time reduced it to a cognitive proposition where we just want to hit people over the head, give them a track, or just tell them to come to us. But evangelism, what we see in scripture is we're sent ones. We're sent ones to go into all of the world and to bear witness. And this happens with boots on the ground in our neighborhoods, in our relationship, in family rooms, around the baseball fields, at dinner room tables, in the classrooms, with real people and real lives with real stories. And so,
Yeah.
one of the ways that pastors can do this is not only modeling it, but talking about it. Be really open about your friends outside of the church, because sometimes the only friends that pastors have are other pastors or people in the church. And start talking about it, people that you rub shoulders with, because I think that can be an imagination shaper for our people and give our people permission.
I love that. So the two most evangelistic things I felt like I've done last 5 years of my life is join a gym.
Yes.
Right? Not like the one, like the Y or like a big box gym where you can be anonymous, but like group class gym, and coach Little League.
Yes.
Seriously, like those are the two most
Really. Yeah.
evangelistic things that, and
Yes.
the conversations that happen, the spiritual care that I can give people outside the church, folks who come to church now because of it. Um, oh, and of course there's food, eat, like you can
Yeah.
add that in there.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the third most evangelistic thing. Just eat a
Yes.
lot and send a lot of food to people. But
Yes.
I love that is okay. So let me ask you this on that. This is a follow up I have because you said present and proximity. How do you see social media playing in all this?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, so I think social media does have a place. Um, I think that Christians have a unique opportunity to show an alternative way. So, there's it's so interesting the way that pastors, we have these different social media worlds. Twitter is where all the prophets come alive and where the pastors say things. What
That's
it's
right.
where we tweet things that we know our congregations aren't going to see, right? Like that's
Exactly. Your
kind of the
church ain't
joke,
on Twitter, but
right? Your church
Facebook
is
now.
yes, but
Watch out.
Facebook, like you post something, and man, like it doesn't matter if you say like my hair is green. Someone's be like, is it really green? Because I think it might actually be purple.
And
I mean, it's
I
just
hate people who talk about hair all the time. Uh, like that's where it
right. I
goes.
know, like it's such a lightning rod issue. Like, let's stop talking about hair.
Yeah.
Um, but and so I think that pastors and Christians have the opportunity to carve out an alternative way of engaging difficult conversations. And so, unfortunately, what we see with a lot of Christians is a lot of engaging in difficult conversations in unhealthy and polarizing and toxic and really violent ways,
That's right.
really really violent language. And so, I think that social media is an opportunity for Christians to bear witness to an alternative way of engaging.
Yeah. I think what happens if you allow social media to become an addiction, like so many people have, and you get
Yeah.
sucked into it, and it's chopping up your attention span and stealing all your spare moments. I think you start focusing a lot of your influence and attention on things that you have so very little influence over,
Yeah.
like geopolitics and the January 6th hearings and what Kim Kardashian did yesterday, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Instead of spending the majority of your influence on things you've got a lot of influence over, like your
Right.
neighbor or your kids or the people who are in your church. And I've been on I'm one of those people. I've been off of social media almost entirely since last September. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be off forever. Everybody's like, "Oh, so you're just going to be off forever?" Are you one of those? Are you like a digital desert father, Tyler? No, but I'm gonna come back. But it's been really healthy to reorient that part of my
Yeah.
mindset. I
Yeah.
encourage pastors a lot of time. Just take a little fast. Seriously, take a little
Oh,
fast.
I
Reorient your heart and mind.
oh, Tyler, say yes. Fasting from social media is a regular practice. I don't announce it when I do. Um, and it's so funny when I don't post for long periods of time, people will text me, "Are you okay?
Uh
Everything
huh.
okay?"
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I've been weary with social media. I used to be a lot more active, but it comes and goes, and a lot of that is paying attention to my soul. Um, and I had to learn the really hard way when I was lead pastoring in Southern California, Tyler. It almost became like really, we started to believe that it was a tool of the enemy to
Mm,
sabotage my soul because every vacation I went on, um, someone was writing an open letter against me, or just doing something really outlandish, like, and I'd be in vacation, all of a sudden this would pop up in my news feed, and it just would ruin the day. And so I had to make a decision that when I was on vacation, like if I wanted to post a vacation picture, I would post it and then walk away. And really, that's becoming more and more of my practice. If I share something, I share it, and then I mostly walk away because it can be so harsh and damaging to the soul of the pastor. Well, to any Christian, really.
That's good advice. So, speaking of those heavy issues, I want to ask one of the questions that was texted to us. And it sounds like it's someone who lives in your neck of the woods in Chicago. However, these issues are intersecting in pretty much every urban area. Like a lot of these issues, I can look at the city of Louisville where I minister and say, check, 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 check. So here was the question that came in. Just respond here. Um, the person wrote, in the midst of political issues on migration, violence, homicide, suicide, anxiety, gun control, uh, how can the migrant church be a radiant witness in our community in Chicago? So how do we be a radiant witness in the midst of all that?
Yeah. One of the concerns that I've had as a pastor, and what really drove me to write Radiant Church, was the ways that Christians were engaging these issues from a way where we were just we've completely entangled ourselves in either right-wing politics or left-wing politics, and the two are just reacting against the other. And one of the concerns I have in just this way that we have so enmeshed ourselves and entangled ourselves is this deep-seated belief that the kingdom of God is going to be enacted either through the Republican Party or through the Democratic Party, or through a president or through the government. And so what we've done with these issues like gun control and immigration and violence is they've gotten boxed up in either the Republican Party, we talk about it in one way, or the Democratic Party, we talk about it in another way. And we don't know how to talk about it outside of these boxes in a way that is detached and rooted in Scripture. One party over there doesn't own, if you will, the theological vision for how we are to engage these things. And so we've got to detach ourselves and learn how to talk about these ways that isn't married or that isn't enmeshed with one side or the other. And Christians have got to start showing an alternative path. And so, one of the reasons I wrote Radiant Church is a longing to see the church show an alternative way of living, show an alternative way of engaging, show an alternative way of moving towards these issues, not moving away. It is a big problem that if we talk about gun violence or immigration or a lot of these lists that she talked about, they're very real issues impacting very real people that Christians have got to be engaged in. We've got to be having these conversations. We've got to be working it out with fear and trembling. And the problem is a lot of people within earshot or within our congregations, when we start to talk about it, what do we hear? Why can't we just talk about Jesus? Why we got to get so political?
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about Jesus propels us, impels us, compels us to move towards the issues of this day. The church is to bear witness of an alternative way. And so we've got to talk about these things. When we talk about Jesus compels us to move towards those things. And so one of the things that we've got to help our people with in these conversations is help them see that the gospel compels us towards these conversations, and that we are actually talking about Jesus when we talk about gun violence, that we actually are talking about Jesus when we're talking about immigration. Because we see Jesus we see Jesus moving towards so many of the issues of the day. And what does he do? He calls them to the way of peace. He calls them to the way of love. He calls them to the way of mercy. He calls them to the way of carrying the cross. And so turn off Fox News, turn off CNN, turn off MSNBC. Here's the best thing that I think we can do as Christians is read the news, get the headlines, get informed, and turn off talk radio, turn off talk news, because I think that we have become malformed in our thinking and the way that we engage these issues, and we are weaponizing these issues against one another, and we're not seeing any progress. Whereas Christians should be on the front lines of this conversation, not Fox News, not CNN, not MSNBC. And so, how can we be a radiant witness? It is through engaging and not disengaging, but engaging in a way that shows an alternative way and an alternative vernacular, even.
One of the things I challenge people in our church to do when I feel like they may have been become captive to politicization or polarization, I say, this is what I want you to do for a week. Instead of doing your quiet time, I actually want you to get on the news. I want you to get on, the One America Network's website. I want you to get on Fox News' website, CNN's website, and MSNBC's website. And I want you to compare the headlines. Write down the top 10 headlines in each one of them. Write them down in your journal. And I just want you to contemplate what you see there. Because here's what you'll see. You will see that each news outlet dramatically curates the news. Some of them are talking about this and some of them aren't talking about that. And some of them spin it this way. It is always curated and it's always catastrophized in the way that political outlet leans.
And they're pastoring our people.
And that disciples you. So if you live in one of those ecosystems for too long, how are you going to think about the world, right? And I have found that to be incredibly fruitful. A lot of people are like, you know what? I used to read just this or watch just this, the news channel or this newspaper or whatever every single day. And I'm trying to diversify a little bit more. And I'm also trying to get my nose out of that and into the third way of Jesus, however I might be able to do that.
Yes.
So I love that. Okay, we're getting close to the end of our time. There's one last question that I want to ask, and I thought it was the best question on here. So would love to hear your 2 cents on this. What encouragement would you give a pastor or a church leader listening right now who might be struggling and just not feeling very radiant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come out of hiding. So many pastors are in hiding in their pain and their doubts and their fears. And the power of being known in those can be life-saving and can be a lifeline. And what I mean by that is come out of hiding and get into therapy, spiritual director, surround yourself with a tribe of other pastors who are going through the same things you are. One of the things that I did when I was in California is I was part of a pastor's gathering. There was just 3 of us, and we called it Monday Morning Pastors Triage. And so triage, and it was lead pastors from other large churches in the area. And we would just get together. We would cry. We would pray for one another. We would talk about life. We would talk about family, and we held one another up. And I always knew that when Monday came around, before I would, get all depressed, say about numbers or giving or whatever it was that would come my way on Monday, after being exhausted, I knew that I had pastors that I could talk to and that I would leave feeling encouraged and lifted. So come out of hiding. Don't do this alone.
Yeah. Yes and amen. All right. Well, Tara Beth, thank you so much for
having me
with me today, with Spirecast, with our tribe. Restoration Movement churches are awesome. I know you got friends who are a part of our tribe. We were talking about that earlier. So that's on your staff. So that's fantastic. I have officially dubbed you a part of our tribe. I can't really do that.
Love it.
I don't know who can do that because we're the denomination of non. So there's really nobody in charge. But I'm dubbing you as a part of our tribe after today. And
I love it.
Appreciate your book and your public witness.
Thank you.
Public witness that you as a pastor and as a church leader are bringing to this cultural moment. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.